Hello all and welcome, and I'm the MGTOW philosopher. And in this video, I would like to talk about voting, and whether or not voting is actually a right, and if women, or anyone else for that matter, should have the right to vote. Now first off, let me just say that I personally do not believe anything is an actual right. Except maybe those things we possess inherently, like the ability to speak and express ourselves, or the freedom to pursue what makes us happy. However, except for the freedom of speech, which isn't something we are born with, it is something we must learn, hone, and craft over time, there are really no other rights that are just rights, meaning shit we should just have because we exist. I mean, hell, even free speech isn't really free, as you must pay a price all the time, every day, just to possess it. Nor are there any other so-called rights that don't have a cost attached to them. I mean, do you have the right to food, shelter, health care? Of course not, because someone has to make those drugs, treat your injuries, build that house, grow that food. Or you yourself build that house on land you own, or you buy that house from someone else who built it. That's not a right. Of course, if you ask the leftists this question, they would tell you that almost everything is a right. I breathe, so give me free shit. I breathe, so I should be able to do any and everything I want, so long as it doesn't hurt anybody else. Which doesn't apply to rich people, of course, since they have most of the money, so you can go ahead and hurt them and take their shit and give it to me. And I should automatically have everything required to survive. And because I breathe and can take a shit, I should have the right to vote as well. Meaning I should just be given the ability to do so. No work required. Nope. I don't agree with this. First off, I don't agree with the idea of rights. We have rights in America because a lot of people fought to earn them for their children. And their children's children. And then they penned them and made them law so as to try and guarantee that those rights, which are in fact privileges, which they had fought for, so that they would be passed down to each new generation, would exist for the future. Now, that is not just something that existed before we made it exist. Hence, it is something that must continue to be fought for, and in turn, earned by everyone, which is the case for all privileges. We have freedom because people fought for it, and they continue to do so. Freedom is not a right, but instead it's a privilege. And by the way, we have far less freedom now because so many people have given up fighting for it, meaning they let those who want to take away our rights, that being the left, do and say whatever they want without fighting back, while the left intimidates us, so we don't fight back. Now, if you think your rights will be there to avail, so that you can avail yourselves of them at a later date, without you having to do anything to earn them, and in turn keep them, well, you better think again, because no one is entitled to anything, and that includes the right to vote. I think rights need to be earned, except for the right to free speech and to pursue what you want to pursue to find happiness, or the expectation of a fair trial if accused of a crime. Something we men rarely get, by the way, when compared to women. However, in truth, there are not very many positive rights, meaning rights that you just automatically have without taking some risk or paying some kind of price to have them. And depending on how you think about it, you could say we get no such rights at all intrinsically. Not really. You see, most of the so-called rights that we possess are passive or neutral in nature, meaning they don't activate until someone takes an action which then makes those rights necessary in that given situation, such as speaking your mind, or being arrested, or wanting to open a business, meaning to pursue what makes you happy. And you really cannot even explore that right easily, as it costs tons of money and lots of paperwork to open a business, and involves great personal risks to you. And you take risks when speaking your own mind as well, even if you are guaranteed the ability to do so. And the legal system, which supposedly gives you a fair trial, well, it's really only fair if you can afford it. Hence, every so-called right that you think you have actually requires money, effort, and varying levels of risk, or all of the above, for you to avail yourselves of them. Hence, are they really rights at all, or are they things that we have the freedom to pursue, but we by no means are entitled to? You see, the left has conflated words like rights with words like entitlements. You see, they want you to believe that you are entitled to certain things without having to pay a cost, And then they conflate the word entitlement with the word rights, because having certain rights is something everyone agrees upon. This is how the left gets what it wants by changing the meanings of certain words so as to fit their agenda and their narrative. But nobody's entitled to anything or has the right to anything. That's nothing more than circular reasoning. I am not entitled to food. Someone had to grow that food, and their labor has value. I have no right to someone else's labor simply because I want to say that because I breathe, I have a right to have everything that is required to breathe. This is true nowhere in nature. Nowhere. And the last time I checked, buffaloes, well, they weren't lining up in front of the lions and offering the lions their throats. No, the lions have to work hard to kill them buffaloes. So why should a person feel entitled to anyone else's shit? And by the same token, why does anybody believe that they have the right to something that is really a privilege without having actually earned it or being required to pay a high price if need be? But since the left has managed to associate the ideas of rights with the idea of entitlements, many people believe that they are the same thing and that we have a right, meaning that we should automatically have something like health care, food, and housing, just to name a few, and the right to vote, of course. And who said that everyone should have the right to vote anyway? Why, women, of course. They wanted to vote, and they got it through very silly arguments about equality and their suffrage and their lack of representation in a country that they are an equal part of. Equal part? Really? I think we have established that rights are not automatic. There are great risks as well as huge monetary costs when exploring many of these so-called rights that we have. There are roadblocks that one must overcome, hurdles that must be navigated when exploring any of these rights that we have. So they are by no means guaranteed, and not everyone should have access to these privileges, which is what they really are, just because they are breathing. And by the way, the word right simply means that the freedom is there for you to pursue that avenue if you wish to. It's by no means guaranteed that you will have the ability to do so in all cases. Something we've seen all too often of late in regards to free speech. If you pursue your right to free speech, you might have to fight other people physically who do not agree with you. That's reality. You could easily be risking your life. The so-called rights we have must all be fought for, one way or another, and they have become ever more expensive to pursue if we choose to avail ourselves of them. Yet the right to vote is free and costs nothing to pursue. You need pay no price. It's just there, waiting for you once you hit the age of 18. Really? Without having to do anything to earn it? Perhaps the most valuable right we possess, and anyone and everyone can just avail themselves of it, and it is in fact just given to you, unlike all the other rights which people must work and slave to avail themselves of or take great personal risk to exercise. This one is free? Really? If you're saying to yourself at this point that that just doesn't sound quite right, I'd have to agree with you. I think we have all already established that rights are not the same as entitlements, and that the argument could easily be made that not all are entitled to certain rights, i.e. privileges, as I think some of them must be earned. Yet the ability to vote is just being given away, like an Obama phone, or free housing, or free food. All bad ideas, by the way. Entitlements are not rights, and some rights are not entitlements. The left just wants you to think they are, so as to further bankrupt the country and empower the useful idiots to vote for the people who will further the left's agenda. Okay, so if voting is not a right, then what is it? That's a good question. So what is the answer? The answer is that voting is a privilege. That is what it is. And like all privileges, it should be earned. How should it be earned? Well, for starters, I think people should be required to take an IQ test and pass it. No joke. If someone lacks the intelligence to understand the issues, then they should not be given the right to vote. Just as someone who doesn't know how to drive a car shouldn't be given a driver's license. And by the way, only men should be able to vote. That's right, men. Not women, men. And even if a woman could score high enough on an IQ test, their main ways of dealing with problems are their emotions. They make decisions based on feelings, not facts. Oh, that evil Donald Trump. He said grab him by the pussy. He's a rapist. He advocates rape. Of course, what other kind of argument would you expect from a woman? While all the while they ignored the fact that Hillary's husband is a proven rapist, or near enough anyway, and that she enabled his actions and attacked the very women that he allegedly raped. I don't know about you, but that seems pretty outrageous to me. But no, women still wanted to vote for her because, hey, it wasn't her that raped the women. Nah, she just married and stayed married to a guy who was a rapist. Alleged rapist, that is, because of political convenience. Okay. I think you can judge a person based on who their friends are. If I met someone who stayed friends with someone after they found out that person was a rapist, I'd probably have some doubts about the quality of their character. And if I found out that some woman knew her husband was a rapist and she stayed married to him anyway, and even helped cover up those rapes, well, I would have some serious doubts about her quality as a human being. But women? Oh no, that was far less important to them than breaking the glass ceiling, which doesn't really even exist. This is just one example of how women think. The fact that she was a shitty candidate took a back seat to pushing the feminist agenda of finally getting the first woman president. Everything else was secondary to that one goal. Merit? We don't need merit. Merit? Throw that out the window. Don't need it. We need equality. No. What you want is superiority. Forget about who's best for the job. Vagina equals merit to them, and penis equals evil. Yeah, those are people you probably don't want voting for the future leader of the free world. And you can just look at the quality of people that we have had in the White House since women got the vote, if you want to see how well that's working out. Hell, just look at the people in Congress and the Senate and in state governments. It's sunk to an all-time low. The only bright spot is our current president. We can only hope that that trend continues in other areas of government, but I wouldn't count on it. Women, well, they should in no way be allowed to vote. And I think people who cannot score at least 100 on an IQ test should also not be allowed to vote. And everyone should also be forced to take a civics class before getting a license to vote. Yes, that's right, a license. Similar to voter registration, but you actually have to do some shit beyond signing your name and being alive and breathing to get it. And I think these are pretty minimal qualifications to be able to vote, and not such a big deal in my opinion. Average intelligence, take and pass a civics course. Yes, you'd have to pass a civics exam. Ooh, big deal. Part of the problem is that even dumb men who know zero about civics and have very low IQs are allowed to vote. That needs to change too, honestly. Voting is far too important to be left to the borderline retarded and women who have zero grasp of logic and reason. And after all, there's a reason kids can't vote. For example, how do you feel about 7-year-olds voting? Is that a bad idea? Well, just think of a woman as a 7-year-old child. She has much the same maturity level as a 7-year-old, does she not? By that token, someone who is that immature should be allowed nowhere near a voting booth. And these arguments are just the start. There is also the question of whether or not they have earned the right to vote. We've already established that the right to vote is a privilege, not an entitlement. Same goes for every other privilege we have. And all of these privileges can only be pursued at great peril and financial cost to the individual pursuing them. They are things that we men have earned through thousands of years of building the goddamn world. Women did none of that work. Even now, the only jobs they want are cushy, while the men are still doing all the heavy lifting and the building of shit. Hell, when was the last time you saw a woman on the back of a garbage truck or crawling through the sewer pulling dead rats out of sewer pipes or working high steel building a building or constructing a house or anything else for that matter that involves building or making anything? And how many women inventors are there? Can you name for me the worldwide companies that are worth billions that were founded by women? No, you can't. I could go on, but I think I've made my point. Men have fought and died and built the world for thousands, nay, millions of years. We've developed the cognitive skills to solve problems and build systems and make things work well. Women have none of that ability. So what gives them the right to suddenly horn in on everything women have built and get all the access we've worked for so long to have without paying any price to do so? I mean, really, is getting knocked up and being what is essentially an easy bake oven for 9 months, which is essentially you sitting there and getting your feet rubbed, enough to justify having full access to all the rights, nay, privileges that men have fought and still fight to earn? Yes, earn. I think not. Women are human beings, yes, but they are not like us. They are not equal to us. I spoke of this at great length in my video, Equality is Bullshit. So I'm not going to go into it too in-depthly here. All I'll say is that women are not us. They are nothing like us. They don't know what it's like to be a man. And even after getting access to everything we have access to, they're still nothing like us. They can't pass the same tests to get into any of the physically demanding jobs that men must pass to be able to get into. They're allowed to slow walk anything that is physical in nature. They got unlimited tries and dumbed down standards in the military and the police and the fire department and anything else that requires physical strength and stamina and physicality. Men carry their shit for them if they can't. Female cops can't go anywhere without a male partner to do most of their work. And if they do go out on patrol alone, they'll get beaten nearly to death or killed easily by an assailant, something that's been proven time and time again. They still don't fight for our country, and if there is a war and a draft is needed, the men will be forced to serve, but not the women. Yet they want and think they should have the same privileges as we do. Privileges, not rights, that if push comes to shove, men must die for, and women don't have to. Is that right? I think not. No American has any guaranteed rights. We have freedom and nothing more. We can do whatever we want, but there are consequences and costs, and nothing is given to us. Unless you're talking about voting, and unless you're talking about women, of course. We men still have to pay a high price to enjoy these privileges, but for a woman, they're all free. And that's insulting to me as a man, and it should be insulting to you as well. So no, women should not have the right to vote, and they probably never should. Now, if there ever comes a day when they contribute more than they take from society, then maybe it's something that should be revisited as an issue. Because if that ever happened, it would mean that they had matured to a certain extent and gained some perspective about the world and their place in it. However, I don't see that happening anytime soon. Women have it easy in today's world, and I don't see such a special class that is so coddled and treated with such reverence and deference ever growing up to the point where they have the perspective of even the average man, a man who has worked all his life and contributed more than he has taken, and who is required to die for his country if the call comes, a duty that is not required of her, yet she still expects to and gets to have all the privileges of a man. Really? I think that's just despicable, and it most certainly should not be that way. I am the MGTOW philosopher, and I wish you a good day. Take care.